Morning, guys. Time for a little Smarter News coffee talk. I have one kid playing with Legos and singing to himself, and the other child is sleeping, which is shocking. So we're just going to take a little moment together of quiet and crazy hair, a shirt that says sometimes all you need is $1 billion, because isn't that the truth? And I'll just tell you momentarily, last year at this time, it was President's Day, so I hit live for Smarter News. Like, the site was live as of today last year, although I didn't say anything about it, I think, until the next day. I just needed to make sure that it worked. And over the next few days, I'll tell you a little bit about the story of how Smarter News came together, but also the challenges that we had to get it up and running, because they were immense. And sometimes I can't believe it still works. But the truth is, the reason why I'm wearing this shirt, is I bought it. I was laughing to myself when I bought it, because that was my mentality. All you need is $1 billion. If I had $1 billion of startup money, I can make this thing work. But in reality, that's not what you need. You need people. The money would be great. It would be great to have, a lot of money and just not think about it and create a product that people love. But it's about the people. And if they don't love it, it doesn't matter. And so I really am feeling deeply grateful to all of you this week for following us at Smarter News, our crazy journey, our crazy coffee talks in the morning when I look like an insane person chasing after my kids, and we talk a little bit of news and we feel good about the day. You guys really inspire me. You make me feel good. And I'm really grateful for this crazy adventure we're on. And it's just the beginning. It's just the beginning, people. It's just the beginning. So a lot of exciting things ahead. So I don't want to delay too much, because I know you're busy. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of the news that we're seeing over the last 24 hours. A couple really big stories that I think are both interesting and important to know. One thing you should know if you're waking up this morning, you might have already seen on your phone the alert that Bernie Sanders is officially running for president for the presidential nomination for Democrats in 2020. What's interesting about Bernie, you have to remember, is that he's a registered independent, but he calls himself a socialist Democrat, and a socialist Democrat in very generic terms is someone that believes that the wealth structure in America actually keeps people from being able to pursue freedom and opportunity that the country is supposed to promise to all its citizens. So that's why they believe in higher taxes and taking those taxes to provide for things like, free education and free housing in some cases. So it'll be interesting to see his campaign. He's 77 years old, and he says that, his ideas from a couple years ago that people thought were radical are not so radical anymore. And he's actually right, so it'll be an interesting dynamic in the campaign. Kamala Harris, who's also considered one of the front runners for the Democrats, actually came out. Let me see if I could find the quote. And she actually already said, well, I'm not a Democrat socialist. So Democrats are already having to distinguish whether or not they're a Democrat or a Democrat socialist, which is a pretty interesting place to be, in America in 2019. We talked a little bit about that last few weeks. Also, Karl Lagerfeld died. He's a famous designer. You might not know him by name, but you might know him by face. He has those dark glasses, white hair, usually wearing a black suit. When you see his picture, you probably will know him. He dressed so many famous women over the years, was the head of Chanel, and he was just a lightning rod as far as being creative and saying, I don't want to say wild things, but maybe wild things. And so he passed away overnight. Or at least that's what we're hearing overnight, that he passed away. And so those are some of the two news items that you might be waking up to this morning. You might think, well, why does the death of a fashion designer matter? Well, we're really seeing the passing of some of these big names that really determined fashion for so many years. And I think that's important. The way that we dress and express ourselves, I think, has a role in what we do every day. So I just want to mention that to you as well. Have you seen this story out of Florida? There's a story out of Florida about an 11-year-old being arrested, and he was arrested after not standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. But there's something really important to know about this. He was not arrested for not standing. He was arrested for his behavior in the classroom after a conflict with a substitute teacher. So it's a really important distinction that you might not get in the headlines. Here's what happened. There was a substitute teacher in the classroom. The 11-year-old would not stand. The teacher, who's apparently of Cuban descent, was offended by this and didn't realize that the district rules and really the Constitution permits students not to stand. They exchanged words. She wanted him out of the classroom, and this whole kind of conflict erupted. The student is being charged with misdemeanors, according to the police, as of right now. The substitute teacher, according to USA Today, is no longer going to be teaching for the district. But it's really interesting to look back at what we're protected when it comes to the Pledge of Allegiance. And of course, with the Colin Kaepernick NFL situation, kneeling during the Star Spangled Banner, this is probably something that you've thought about over the last couple of years. Turns out that really the public schools have been integral in really defining who gets, has to stand or not stand, because they've been at the center of cases that have challenges at the Supreme Courts over the years. In 1943, the background, and I hope I'm going to generalize this okay, a Jehovah Witness student in a public school did not want to stand. This ended up going to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court says, listen, our Constitution guarantees that people don't like a right to their own belief. This includes students. I think I hear my daughter. Speaking of, which I think is really, I think we think of the First Amendment protecting, laws protecting adults, but let there be light. Let there be light in this household. But it applies to everybody, even students. So, hi. Are you awake? Yeah? What are you doing? Did you look outside?
No.
Come on, let's go into the kitchen. Okay. Liberty says good morning. Speaking of Pledge of Allegiance. Anyways, the Pledge of Allegiance was written specifically for school students to recite. And then over the last 100 years, students have helped define what is constitutionally protected.
Look, Mama.
What happened? What?
Look, Sushi.
Your tushy? We have a lot of tushy talk. Maybe we should call this tushy talk instead of coffee talk. What's wrong? Do you want to take it off? Let's take it off.
Yeah.
Let's be free. Let's be free. We have a diaper issue. Hold on. Let's be free. Can you take it off yourself, or you want me to help you? It's a dangerous thing when your 2-year-old can take off their own diaper. We're just going to do it today. Anyhow, what you should know is that it is protected, that you do not have to stand and recite the Pledge of Allegiance in a school. Wait a minute. This is an important distinction. Hold on. You don't have to salute and you don't have to recite. I think the question of whether or not you need to stand with the rest of the class could be a disciplinary issue. But, okay. What's wrong? You want to take it off, or you want to take it up? You want to take it up? Okay, can you throw that in the garbage can?
No.
Okay.
What's this?
That's a tea bag. I'm drinking tea. Coffee talk, and it's tea talk, man. Here we go. Anyhow, the important thing I think you need to know, I don't know what's in that cup, but I wouldn't drink it. It's from last night. Is there anything in there?
Yeah, it's chocolate milk.
It's chocolate milk from last night?
Yeah.
Okay, there's nothing. Okay. It's happened before in this household. Anyhow, the important thing is this student was not arrested for not saying the pledge, and I want you to be clear on that. Okay, and final thing I want to talk to you about today is that if you remember this photo, let me show you my really messy computer. Do you guys know the photo of the kissing sailor in Times Square? Hold on, I'm going to pull it up for you. There we go. Okay, hold on a second. You guys know this photo, right? This man, George, died over the last 24 hours. He was 95. That's George, that's Greta. And this photo is iconic for so many reasons. including the fact that it was taken as we learned of the Japanese surrender in World War II. I think sometimes it's hard to think about, well, why does this picture mean so much? But let me just explain a couple things. George was from Rhode Island. He was from a family of fishermen. He enlisted in the Navy as a 19-year-old, and at this point, okay, give me 2 minutes, okay? He had been in the Navy for 3 years at this point, and this is Greta. Greta came to America as a 15-year-old from Austria. She's 19 here. And she's actually a dental assistant, dressed like this because that's the uniform that they wear. George had seen some combat and had seen what nurses did for those wounded in World War II. So when he saw a nurse, he thought on the street, he grabbed her and kissed her. What's interesting is George was actually on a date with Rita, who he later married and spent 70 years with. And Greta and George both didn't really know that their photo had been taken. So it's an interesting picture just to take a look back at. Yes, Liberty is not impressed. But if you see another view of this picture, you can see George's wife, Rita, in the background smiling at her date, despite the fact that she grabbed somebody else. He grabbed somebody else to kiss. Okay, George Strait? Do you want to listen to George Strait?
No.
Okay. Oh, George!
Yeah.
Yes, this is a different George. This is not George Strait, but you're very smart. Appreciate that.
No.
What I think is really important to know about this photo is it's hard to understand the exuberance in the end of World War II. And you know that I'm a wife of a veteran, so I think it's important to always pay close attention to the military, those that have been lost and wounded. But we all need to understand the perspective for World War II. 400,000 Americans died in World War II. That's 57 times, if I have my math correct, those who have died in Iraq and Afghanistan. That's not to diminish their sacrifice, but just to give us some perspective. I mean, it was an extremely deadly war. 600,000 plus were injured in World War II. So you have 1 million who were killed in action or injured. And so the celebration that hit the streets at the time was unlike something that we can probably identify with today, just because the war touched so many people for so long, for so many years. So that's a little American history for you today. The kissing sailor. Last thought on this is that Rita, George's wife, said that when people found out he was the kissing sailor, they got a kiss. So she was just comfortable with her husband, handing out kisses as he saw fit and as was demanded of him over the years. All right, guys, those are a couple things I think you need to know today. Check out our quick quote section if you can. The president made some really strong statements on Venezuela. That's another big story that we should continue to watch. And the president is also being challenged as far as his use of a national emergency to get extra funding for the border wall. But you already knew that was coming. Now we're seeing it come from the states. Have a great day, you guys. And thanks again for everything. I really appreciate it. Liberty, do you want to say have a nice day?
I want to eat this.
You cannot eat that. She wants to eat the tea bag. This is my cue to leave. I probably need to make them breakfast, feed my children. Have a great day, you guys. I'll see you tomorrow.